The Department of Higher Education is providing the Scopa with a comprehensive update on the latest developments regarding the National Skills Fund investigation and, of course, the audit outcomes and investigations for the 2021-2022 period. Let's dip in and listen in.
That the reconciliation happens so that that difference between what this institution has and what NSFAS has is dealt with on an academic year basis. The third thing that we found is a group called unfunded students. So these are students that at the beginning of the year, NSFAS would confirm to the different institutions that they will fund for that academic year. Subsequent to that, there would be other communications that come to the institutions that say you must unfund. We are unfunding student X. The problem with that is there are certain rules in different institutions that says when can you cancel with a full refund. So if that communication comes afterwards, the institutions are saying now NSFAS must be fully eligible for that particular student. So you'd find a difference where in the institution's books they're saying yes, NSFAS is still going to pay, but NSFAS in their books would not have the student anymore because they would have said we have unfunded that particular student. The other bucket, which we say it's other, it's based on a number of other scenarios that happen in the higher education sector, where maybe a student will receive funding from NSFAS, and they'll also receive funding from another funder. How the rules work is NSFAS is not the primary funder. Therefore, if you receive other funding, the distributions that you've received from NSFAS need to go back to NSFAS. But because the reconciliation was done, those refunds were also not returned to NSFAS for the students that receive more than one funding. And we also found that the double funding students does not only happen in situations where it's NSFAS and a private sector, happen between NSFAS and other government institutions. The other scenarios that would happen was maybe a student would cancel the whole academic year, but funds have been distributed. Therefore, those funds also need to be returned back to NSFAS. Those are the other scenarios that we found on the ground that would lead to inconsistencies between the data that NSFAS has and the data that the institution has. That's where the reconciliation process is very important, because it will ensure that at the end of academic years, all these different scenarios are taken into consideration. And if there's additional funds that need to be sent to the institutions, those funds are sent. And if there's funds that need to be returned to NSFAS, those funds are returned to NSFAS. And then we say the impact of that is that there are two possible scenarios that could come from the closeout report or the lack of the closeout report not being done. The one scenario is institutions are holding funds that belong to NSFAS. Therefore, there is state assets that are sitting with those different institutions. The second part is that there could be a scenario where NSFAS owes the different institutions. That means that there is money that must come somewhere from the fiscus that has not been properly being engaged with on a year-by-year basis. Therefore, there would be a requirement to have an outflow out of a sudden for a period of covering 2017 to 2021, depending on what the final closeout report says. Our concerns in relation to the COP, it's more aligned also with what the AG was saying. We have been at NSFAS for a while, and we've seen that there is no plan to insource the reconciliation process. Since the beginning to date, the reconciliation process is in the hands of consultants. And then we are saying that that's a concern, because the reconciliation process as it is will always be there as long as NSFAS is there in its current form. Therefore, that will mean that the consultants that are there would always have to be around to be able to assist NSFAS. And we think this, because of the nature of the reconciliation, it needs to be something that is done in-house to ensure that it is done timelessly and there is funds saved. There is no finalization of funding student status. We're saying that the practice of funding a student at the beginning of the year, and then subsequent to that you are unfunding the student, needs to come to some form of finality. There needs to be an investment either into the systems or design of proper controls to ensure that once a student is funded, the student is funded. Yes, there might be one or two students that you realize that they've gave you incorrect information, but we were saying that we found this across all the 76 institutions. And that's where we're saying that that's a concern, that you would say in the beginning the student is funded, and before the year is over, you are an unfunded student. The institutions are saying then, I've already budgeted for that student, I can't put anybody on that seat at that point. And there's other institutions that would have given the student allowances. So the question is then, how does the recovery of those allowances happen? So it has a multiple of effect, the fact that there is no one status that is given to students correctly to institutions about the students. Some of the TVETs that we visited are still struggling with proper financial reporting. We found that we had to explain and go to the basics in terms of what we are looking for in terms of the closeout, the information, and then that is also a concern for us. The recommendation is that there needs to be a detailed plan in terms of the insourcing of the reconciliation process. There needs to be an engagement with professional bodies to assist the struggling TVETs. And then we also recommended that the funds that are received from the closeout process must be ring-fenced and must be used to settle liabilities that come from the closeout academic years. Therefore, because we're investigating currently 2017 to 2021, if there are monies like the HOU has indicated that we have recovered, they must not be used for any other purpose than the closeout for those academic years, and then they must not be cross-mingled into other academic years. So you must not find our collections from the closeout being used for purposes in 2022 or 2023, because when we come to a point where once everything is settled, we can come and quantify and say, from the closeout, did NSFAS have assets or do they have liabilities that are still due to institutions? But if we cross-pollinate, then that will make it very difficult. In terms of the COP, we also say that there's lack of consequence management by oversight committees. We are saying that, for example, the Audit and Risk Committee did not ensure that then there are annual reconciliations of funds distributed to institutions. We did not understand how, on an annual basis, this could roll over from 2017, 2018, 2019, while there is an oversight committee that this part falls squarely on. We are also looking at the issue of interest. There's 3 scenarios that we've identified there. There are institutions that when they realize at the end of an academic year that NSFAS is not coming to the party in terms of the reconciliation, they did the reconciliations themselves. So where they found that there is funds that to NSFAS, they deposited those funds into an interest-bearing account. For those institutions, we are saying we want the capital and the interest to be returned to NSFAS. There's a second cohort of institutions that, based on their treasury policies, it would say if there's a surplus at the end of the year, you need to invest those. So because there would be a surplus from NSFAS funds that are not returned, that would be commingled with whatever investments are there from the institutions. And then also with those ones, we are saying we would want to claw back the capital and the interest. Now, there's a third category of institutions that when they realized that NSFAS was not doing their reconciliations as timelessly and they had excess funds from NSFAS, they continued to use those funds, although they knew that those funds did not belong to them. Those are the institutions that you find that currently we are signing AODs with them to allow them to repay the amount that they owe to NSFAS. But the question that we are asking there is, if you took money that does not belong to you at any given point, on normal business operations, you would have had to go to a third party to borrow money. But you borrowed yourself money that belonged to NSFAS. Therefore, should we not also go the same route of saying you should be charged interest retrospectively for the funds that you knew not, but you still use them for operations? Other focus area that we're going to deal with is we're going to look at the presence of interest. So if there are people that we have identified as persons of interest in the NSFAS investigation, we're going to do a money trail to ensure that if there's any assets that they bought from those contracts that we say are regular, we can claw back those contracts. We're going to look at the different service providers and say, based on what we are seeing on your financials, are you the beneficial owner of said business? And if not, we're going to try and identify those beneficial owners and then come to a point where we do a civil recovery of those funds that they've received from the irregular contract. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a cash flow analysis to ensure that the NSFAS bucket is not leaking. If 10 Rand is given to NSFAS for and for the students, we're going to trace both all that 10 Rand to the last T. To say, if you had given money to an institution for tuition, did that institution receive that tuition money? If you were given money to distribute allowances, did that allowance actually go to that student? And then if there is any funds that did not reach a student, we are going to recover those funds from either the university or a service provider that was appointed to distribute those said funds. Chair and honorable members, other areas that are of interest to us is the current accreditation of student accommodation providers, and is the missing middle funding. With regards to missing middle funding, it goes back to one of the MI that was raised by the AG to say that you were incorrectly accounting for interest previously. But then there is a new missing middle funding that you want to do that speaks to the same areas that you are struggling with. Therefore, is it prudent for you to take on this thing while you still haven't resolved something that is very similar? Similar with the accreditation of student accommodation providers, we are saying that there's a lot of things that are not going correct in the NSFAS ecosystem. Is it prudent for you to take on something else while you still have other issues that you still need to deal with? We are also going to do an evaluation of the different oversight committees to say, are they adequately staffed? One of the key things at NSFAS that was spoken about was the IT issues. So that we're going to check if on the oversight committees are there members there that have the required skills to be able to provide proper oversight on the different IT and finance and operational matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Proceeding on the investigation, now update on some of the focus area. The first focus area that we dealt with is the update. It's a ICT and financial management system investigation. Here we are looking at the two focus area, which is the various IT system used by NSFAS and the financial management system that is used by NSFAS. So we are looking at both these two focus area. And the first one, Chair, we can indicate that we are looking at a particular contract where we met with the service provider on the 18th so that we can able to understand the whole contract, how is it going, and the investigation is progressing well on this aspect, where ultimately there will be finding that will be making part based on this system. And also it goes further to the issue of the systemic issue that will come out of the IT system that NSFAS are using. The second one also look at the financial management system. As indicated, these are both system issues that we are looking, and we are looking at getting an expert to be able to come and look at the system that NSFAS are using so that they can able to see whether did they get value for money out of all those systems. And based on this one, we even wrote to the board to indicate to us that there were some systemic recommendations from other reports that were commissioned by the department, and just to see how they implement them, so that we can able to see whether did they take any action based on the recommendation. So the process is ongoing. Then over and above, the other focus area, we're looking at the SCM investigation. And on the SCM investigation, we are looking at the lease agreement, the provision of direct payment allowance to student, and also the supply and delivery of office furniture. Then in terms of the lease agreement, we are looking at the lease agreement of the building where NSFAS is currently located. And on this one, the procurement process is almost done. We have also appointed the QS so that he can able to assist us with the calculation of the square meters and the space. So we are waiting for his report, and once his report is done, we will be in a position to make an informed decision as to what outcome are we going to recommend. The second one is, as indicated, that provision of the right payment allowance to student. This one is the one that relates to the Werksman report. As you understand, Chair, that once Werksman was appointed, we were already busy with the investigation, and we are done with the investigation. Currently, we are tightening the loose end in terms of the investigation. Then from there on, we will be making some recommendation regarding the entire contract as to what is it that needs to happen. And luckily, we did meet with the chairperson of the board and the management of NSFAS so that we can able to map the way forward in terms of this particular contract. Then the other contract, we are looking at the supply and delivery of office furniture, as well as the supply of computer hardware and laptop. And on this one also, the investigation is still ongoing. So far, we are at the advanced stage, and we will be making pronouncement very soon on the outcome. Then this one is the finalized investigation on SCM, where we did not find any irregularity, which is the one relating to the laptop tender. Then in terms of the interim finding pertaining to the closeout report, as you can see that currently we have visited 58 institutions, and we still have to visit 18 that we include. Out of the 18, it's 14 TVET and 4 university, where we are sitting down with the institution to able to go through the process of the closeout report with them so that we can able to see how much they need to pay back to NSFAS. So this process is also ongoing. This talks to the systemic weaknesses identified. We did indicate these processes previously when we presented. I will jump on them. And also the observation, Chair, they are still the same as presented last year when we appeared before Scopa, so I will not go through them. And this also include the limitation. Then in terms of the summary outcome, Chair, in terms of the closeout report, that's the report that we have given sent to Scopa pertaining to some of the institutions where we have visited and able to recover money back from the state institution so that it can, from the university, so that it can go back to NSFAS. Currently, we are sitting at 688 million that we have recovered from all these state, the university. And this process is still ongoing, and we're still engaging with some institution so that they can able to pay back the money that we have recovered. And we can indicate that the last one, which is in Mpumalanga, University of Mpumalanga, the money was paid yesterday. So just to show that this is really ongoing processes that we are currently undertaking. Then also over and above the money that we are receiving from the institution, there's also the AOD that we are signing with different institutions. Those are the institutions that utilize the money. And when you go to them, they say, we don't have money, but we can pay on a monthly basis. So those ones reflected there. And over and above the state, the institution, there are also...
All right, let's come out of that briefing. Of course, that is the Parliament's Standing Committee on Public Accounts hearing there from the SIU, as well as the Higher Department of Education, giving an update on the NSFAS investigations and, of course, the audits there too. Of course, various institutions, companies of and institutions of learning contracts have also been looked into. Over 600 million rands has so far been recovered in terms of just monies that have been overspent by the national the scheme, and of course we'll continue to give you feedback in terms of what is going to transpire out of that Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and of course a briefing by the Education Department of Higher Learning.